Using video games as a means to explore philosophy? It's a fad going on right now, one that many of you in my class think only started just recently. But what if I was to tell you that that is a moot point that first became irrelevant back in 1995 when a game that was created that so perfectly encapsulated the human experience that no other game since has dared lived up to the lofty standards it has set. That game is Teenagent. A man must define his own existence, but only after struggling through the pointless cruelty that is life. This is the simple truth behind the human experience we all share, one that is perfectly encapsulated with a simple video game. That game, of course, is 1995 point-and-click adventure game Teenagent, and its hero is Mark, a sexually starved teenage boy who has been charged with saving America's dwindling gold supply from a mad doctor and his mafioso benefactor. Now, I'll be the first to admit the idea of a teen secret agent, the concept where the game gets its name from rather than an airborne poison used to incapacitate anyone over the age of 12 under the age of 20, is a ridiculous notion that seems something more akin to a Three Ninjas sequel rather than the works of Fyodor Dostoevsky. But like all great works of philosophy, one must look past the superficial and study the subtext. Once you do, you'll see that beneath Mark's cheesy pink hat and corny one-liners is a man suffering from a deep existential crisis. By even using the word existentialism, this makes Mark the deepest character in video game history. So, does depth actually hurt video games? Well, one only has to look at the sales numbers to find out. Games like Call of Duty rake in millions of dollars a day, whereas Ajuan Peterson's Eternal Bitterness to Dissolution of Dignity only raised $45 on its Indiegogo campaign. 40 of which was from me. Now I know what you're all saying to yourself. Professor, no one wants to play a game about a 90-year-old sex offender reliving childhood trauma through way of dementia that takes place entirely in a nursing home that might also be purgatory. But really, is that the developer's fault? Or yours? One only has to look at Mario to understand that people don't want to be challenged by their video game protagonists. I mean, look at him. What is he thinking? What's going on in the head of his? Mario is a creature of impulse, with no real drive or desires. If the princess is in her castle, he is content. If the princess is removed from castle, he must acquire princess. It's the simple programming logic, or the logic of an insect, rather than the logic of a human being. Now, his brother Luigi Mario is a tad bit better, but only a tad. No, I said tad, not toad. In the game Luigi's Mansion, Luigi proves he suffers from phasmophobia, the irrational fear of ghosts. This of course would suggest that Luigi is a higher functioning being than Mario, for one to have an overactive psyche, one must have a psyche to begin with. However, Luigi doesn't truly conquer his fears. Now you may point out to me that he does bust those ghosts, and it can be surmised that busting does make him feel good. However, I will tell you he does this with the use of a machine, and doesn't actually address the deeper psychological problem he's facing. Ergo, Luigi is like most of us, or should I say most of you. He uses a machine to distract him from his true psychological pain, and thusly cannot ascend the ziggurat to become an Ubermensch. In fact, we as a society use gadgets and gizmos and machines as a way of removing the cause, but not the symptoms of our deep anxieties and woes, instead of introspectively looking for the answers to our real problems. You yourself right now are using a device that's stunting your growth as a human being. However, you're using it to watch my show, so I think it balances out. So what is it exactly that makes Mark the Teenagent a better character than Mario? Or Master Chief, or Bubsy the Bobcat, or Inky, Blinky, Pinky, Clyde, Sue, Piccolo, Awesome Possum, JJ, or Jeff? Because he is confronted by and conquers the 6 challenges of existentialism: absurdity, boredom, angst, despair, choice, and death. Absurdity. At the behest of the United States government, Mark the Teenagent will go on a quest. A quest that is, like most quests, quite absurd. When Great King Hrothgar asks Beowulf to sleep on the mead hall floor and await the attack of Grendel the Troll, is that not absurd? When Odysseus has to sail the seas and the oceans of the world and do battle with Scylla and Charybdis and Polyphemus the Cyclops and even travel to the belly of Hades itself, is that not absurd? Well, Mark's quest is even more absurd. In fact, the members of his government admit what a ignorant and foolhardy plan that is to trust a unknown teen with matters of national security in the game's opening cutscene. Really, before you even see the main character, they admit what a stupid idea it is. And his adventure only gets more bizarre from there. He encounters a masochistic drill sergeant who finds pseudo-sexual gratification from being tortured by his own trainees. a pill that allows him to freeze time, and a rapping robosafe. How does he respond to such disturbing stimuli? With a cool, or a wow, or some kind of sarcastic joke. Now, one could argue that Mark's nonchalant attitude is actually a product of teenage ignorance, and one could also make the case that up until a certain point of the game, this is actually true about Mark's character. Mark is girl crazy, cruel to animals, and completely self-motivated. Like all great minds, Mark must be taught to reach a higher level of thinking. He must be guided up the mountain by an enlightened Sherpa, and he learns this from the most absurd of places. A small boy. I am Sunny. Sunny, I am. Cogito ergo sum. Cogito ergo sunny. Doesn't get deeper than that, folks. And this pearl of wisdom is passed down not from a wise man to a student. It's passed down from a boy to a teen. Absurdity. Boredom. Simply put, this is a point-and-click adventure game not developed by LucasArts, so it's probably going to be pretty boring. Angst. Unrequited love. Is there anything more painful than that? Except for maybe this. Even though Mark is well on his way to becoming a wise man, or a wise teen rather, he still falls for the obvious sinkhole that is the chemically imbalanced caused, sexually humiliating, soul-rendering, ego-deflating trap lesser men know as love. Mark falls for all the tricks, and she plays all the roles, from first being aloof to then being a damsel in distress, and soon he is smitten by this girl he barely knows. He even knocks out an armed guard simply because someone offered her $100 for a meager kiss. Now, if I felt the compulsion to get into a fistfight every time a girl I fancied was offered currency in exchange for sexual favors, I'd probably be coming to this class with a lot more black eyes. Then again, it'd probably be because I'd be punching myself in the face. And in the end, does Mark actually get the gratification of much-deserved copulation? Or even the simple indulgence of a clever maneuvering of his and Anne's labium superius and labium inferius oris? Or a fucking handshake? No. Mark gets nothing from Anne. In fact, it's revealed to him that she's a plant from the very government that hired him, used to motivate him. Love is a lie, Mark. And throughout recorded history, those with power have used this phantasm of companionship to motivate, see, trick, scholars and dimwits alike into doing heinous things. To start wars between nations. To convince consumers that they need to buy trash wrapped in more trash. To trick people into giving up valuable personal information on online dating sites. And of course to trick a young teen into murdering a man with a bottle of chili sauce so he can gain access to a pill that freezes time. Mark learns that sex is a weapon, the most powerful and terrifying one that leaves the mind and body wanting and empty. You know, my ex-wife used sex as a weapon, and that's why I had to have hip replacement surgery in 2007. Despair. At one point in the game, Mark finally realizes the true nature of the world, and is understandably disheartened by it. Mark is forced to play the bad guy as he manipulates the innocence of semi-anthropomorphic animals, and it is here that he makes a stunning realization. Life is indeed brutal, as Mark has been used, abused, and confused. And now that he is robbed of the blinders of innocence, Mark can see how horrible the world around him truly is. This truth sends Mark spiraling into a depression, a malaise of which there seems to be no end. So what does one do in this situation? Does one dig their own grave? Does one turn their aggression outwards? Does one totally mentally disintegrate? No. You embrace a greater truth. A truth that can only be found in choice. In the end, can any of us prove that the world we live in actually exists? You know, Sonny made a point more poignant than any of us actually realize. Cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am, is more than a simple affirmation of oneself for some ego-boosting mumbo-jumbo. What it really means is the only thing one can trust is their own existence. For all we know, this world is but a dream. And after realizing what an absurd, horrid, brutal world he lives in, Mark has an epiphany. His world is not real. That's right, the character actually realizes he's inside of a video game. He toys with this notion at first by testing the boundaries of the fourth wall, and then he literally and physically breaks it by actually climbing out of the game at one point. Mark is no longer in a world ruled by science or by some infallible god. Mark is in a world created by uncreative men. And while at first this turns his despair into amusement, it'll turn that amusement into resolve. The end of this game passes with little to no fanfare, as Mark concludes his adventure according to the will of the hands of fate at the keyboard. After he's awarded his medal, though, and the credits roll, Mark shows us his free will, his ability to choose. It would appear there's one last time-freezing pill left in Mark's possession, and one can only imagine what he intends to do with it. You know what he does with it? Nothing. Nothing at all. Fade to black, the end. He chooses the one thing he knows will not give us, the players, any satisfaction. He chooses inaction. He denies us of a true conclusion. He doesn't just deny us. He defies us. Us. His gods that sit on the opposite side of the two-way mirror known as our personal computer. Much like Kilgore Trout wrote about a single sentient being in a world full of automatons, Mark the Teenagent is the only sentient being in a world filled with computer programs. But rather than jumping off of a waterfall while shouting, "Wouldn't you really rather have a Buick?" to show the undeniable proof of his free will, Mark the Teenagent, this pixelated Bartleby, decides to tell us, his gods, to go fuck ourselves by doing nothing. Ladies and gentlemen of my class, this not only makes Mark more human than most video game characters, it makes him more human than most of you. Really think about that, class. Who's running your program right now? I give the game Teenagent an A+, and luckily, if you want to experience this game for yourself, you can acquire it for free at GOG.com, much in the same way that endorsement for GOG.com was free. For now. I swear I'm going to start making money off of this show, even if I have to endorse sumo beanbag chairs. Your homework for the day is to find an example of another video game, comic book, or cartoon character that one can consider is alive given the philosophical parameters I have given you. Turn in your answers in the comment section below, or on Reload Last Save's Twitter account, or make a video of your own if you're so inclined to do so. If one of you has an answer that I find insightful, I might share it at the end of the next class. I might. Please note that Deadpool using his own health bar as a weapon in Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is not a valid entry, nor is Raphael's incessant need to break the fourth wall in every single episode of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The Animaniacs might count, though. Well, for Rablats and Reload Last Save, this has been Professor V, this has been Gameducation, and class dismissed. And yes, we're still going with that sign-off phrase until, I don't know, maybe one of you can come up with a better one. Oh. Thought I forgot something, didn't you? Thought I forgot about death. How does Mark the Teenagent conquer death? How do any of us conquer death? He puts a chainsaw down his pants. He puts a running, working chainsaw down the front of his pants and lives. Existentialism. Fuck the stranger. Game of the year.
Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha!